originally was planned as a neighborhood kind of thing, but it kind of expanded to a Meridian thing for each of them, and that just kind of organically happened. So I want to thank you all for coming, and so yeah, so we'll get right into it. John Sarver is here, and he's the he had been the chairperson of the Meridian Environmental Commission, has now passed the baton to someone else, but you're also, you still play a role in the Greater Lansing, what, John, what's it, the association's called, the Greater Lansing Solar?
Well, Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association.
Great, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, and you're still like the executive director of that, or?
Well, I'm still on the board.
On the board. Okay. All right, and Pete Morgan is here with Absolute Solar, who we chose to have our solar system installed with. And so we'll just get right into the PowerPoint then. Do I click them or do you, John?
I will, and it worked.
Okay, there we go. Well, you know, it's probably obvious to most people why one would go solar. We're obviously trying to tap into renewable power sources and save the environment and all that sort of thing, but it also gives us some personal control for our own energy sources. I know the installment or the package that we got includes a bit of an upgrade so that we can get a battery added when the battery costs come down. And that would mean we could be completely off the grid if we chose or not. It goes both ways. And also we'd have the ability to, when our next car will be electric, and there will be the ability to use that for electrical charging, so that'll be set up ahead of time. Most of the systems, it depends what you're currently using on your system, how much energy, but most pay for themselves in 10 years. Ours was out a little less than that. If everybody could mute their phone, that would be great, or their Zoom. So the panels last for at least 25 years. I think, Pete, maybe you can go over the warranty and your turn. They're quite long. They do add to the value. Appraisers recognize, I mean, the market recognizes the value, and appraisers have attracted that. If you end up selling before the theoretical 10 years or 8 years, whatever it is, before they're paid off, it should, you know, it adds value to it. It's been proven in the market. And so there's no increase in property taxes. There was a law passed in Michigan that separated that out so that there wouldn't be an increase in your value. They pretty much are no maintenance. They're just kind of up there doing their thing. And as you know, this Solarize Meridian is a program. It came from Ann Arbor, I guess, inspired by an Ann Arbor program that was quite successful, that was trying to encourage groups going through, which, you know, you can learn from each other and ask questions and so forth. And it also paid, you know, dividends to the installer, because then they would work within a smaller geographic area and be able to get their crews around, and also only have to work with one municipality to get approval, because there are approvals that have to go with the process, including with, you know, with your utility provider or Consumers Energy in our cases. So and this program provides a maximum of 15% discount if 15 people end up going with it. Or you may just gain the knowledge of it and kind of think about it, and some future date decide to do it. So it's good anyway, you know, anyway it folds out. There's also currently this year a 26% federal tax credit, which means when you go to pay your taxes, you can offset it dollar for dollar with that tax credit until you use it all up. It may take you a couple of years to use it all up, but it's still money that you don't have to pay. So let's see. Yeah, so how was the installer selected? Well, I was lucky enough to to know John and some other people from the township who has been going through this process for many years, and had a list of not approved installers, but installers that they suggested. So I actually ended up calling 3 and getting bids back, and I had time to ask questions of all of them and get answers. And so I, just like any large project that you would do, you undoubtedly get 3 proposals and evaluate and take your best shot. So yeah, and all of the there's a lot to consider. I mean, there's no doubt it's a big decision, and it's a different kind of decision, so that you don't really have, I think most people don't have built up a knowledge, like a context for it. So you almost have to build the context as well as, how you're going to make your individual decision. So next slide. Oh, and there's our house, and we ended up getting 11 panels. It's a 4.4 kilowatt system. We have the latest and greatest. We were slated to get a different kind of solar panel, but I got the bids back in October when the township was also trying to figure out how the our Solarize program would fold out. So it took a little longer to figure out how we were going to work it. And in the interim, the panels became unavailable. But there wasn't a better iteration, and so that's included in it. It is based on your most recent consumer's bill. Consumers has something to say about it. They won't let you get anything much larger than what you're currently using. Yeah, this is a picture of what it looks like on the outside. On the right there is what was installed, and Pete can tell you exactly what that is. On the left is the computer program on your phone, and it shows each of the panels and how much they're drawing in at any particular time of the day. So that's kind of cool. And then that phone app also gives you a compilation by day, by week, tells you how many trees you're saving, all kinds of fun data. So, so with that, John, are you next, or Pete's next, or?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go next, and then Pete
Okay.
will end with talking about the specific package that Absolute Solar will offer, kind of your basic system. I'm going to just very basically, in a very basic way, talk about how solar systems work. Most of us have rooftop solar panels, but there are ground mount. So if you had a big enough backyard in a sunny spot, a ground mount might work for you and have some advantages. The sun shines, and the sunlight hits the solar panels. It gets those electrons going, and the electrons coming off of your panels is DC power, and so that has to be converted by an inverter into AC power so it can be used in your home. What happens typically during the summer is that you produce more than you actually can use at your home. And then you would kind of follow that green line, which basically means excess power is being given to the utility and is literally going next door. And what they do is they give you a bill credit. Then what happens in the winter is that you typically aren't producing as much as you need. So of course you're buying power from the utility, Consumers Energy, and also at that time you're using the bill credits. And so if you have a big enough system, basically over the course of a year, you could kind of not pay anything for electricity. That's not exactly true, but because they don't give you quite the same rate for the credit that they do for how much they charge you. But we'll get into that in a minute. Val had mentioned about the federal tax credit. We still have 26% this year, which is pretty good. And next year it's going to go down to 22%, which is still not bad. But then it zeroes out in 2024. Now there is talking in Washington about maybe Congress renewing the solar tax credits, but if anybody could predict what's going to happen in Washington, give me a call. Who knows? Now, there is a distributed generation tariff. That's a nice long term. And that's basically the rate, the tariff that the utility has with you if you have a solar system. So like I described before, your excess electricity goes to the utility. And this tariff actually replaced net metering. You may hear that term from some folks. Net metering was basically the same idea, but the buyback rate, the credit rate was much better. It was 1-for-1. And now basically the bill credit is a little more than half the retail rate. So that's just for you to be aware of. You do get some credit for that excess electricity, but it's not at the full retail. And like I had indicated with the chart, in summer you typically earn bill credits, and in winter you use them. And like Val mentioned, your system must be sized to electric usage. Now, there can be, basically it's based on your recent history. And there can be some exceptions to that. The typical one that comes up is, I'm going to buy an electric vehicle, and I know that's going to use some power. And so really, I'd like to put in a bigger system than is justified by my electric use from last year. Well, that's the sort of situation you can kind of negotiate with consumers and kind of prove to them you've bought an electric vehicle and do an estimate of how much power you would need, and then they would give you some extra, in a sense, give you a little more leeway in designing your system. And just a couple of words about financing. You can obviously take money out of savings. You're going to have a better return on your money with the solar system than you will, at least in the credit union and banks I'm familiar with. Home improvement loans are an option. Home equity loans are a good option because it's usually the lowest interest rate, because you're basically using your house as securing the loan. And there is a program called Michigan Saves, which has a loss reserve, which means that basically they could lower the interest rate. So that is also an unsecured loan and has a pretty good interest rate. So those are just some of your options. And if you wanted to check out Michigan Saves, you could just Google michigansaves.org. And here's where Pete takes over.
Thank you much, both John and Valerie. So just a little bit about the basic systems that we install. And again, we are more than willing to work within your interests and what you feel is best for your house. But currently our go-to solar panels are Helene solar panels. They are a Canadian-owned company that have plants in Canada, in Minnesota, and Florida. They're BAA approved, which means that at least 50% of materials and production and construction take place in North America. So that's always important to us. We try and highlight that whenever we can. They're a tier 1 panel, 370 watts with 20.3% efficiency. They are all black, so there's a nice aesthetic if it's going on the roof of your house. Black frames and cells, you can see the dimensions right there, which are pretty standard for most panels, around 70 by 40. We use Iron Ridge racking on rooftops, which is one of the premier racking companies in the solar industry, and also based in the US. And then for our proposals, what our lead off is with the SolarEdge inverter and optimizer system. And as John mentioned, what that entails is each panel has an optimizer underneath, which levels flow. It allows each panel to work independently, and you can monitor it in real time. So you saw with Val's slide earlier, you can see exactly how many watts or kilowatts your panel is making in the day, or up to that point during the day, and that's constantly flushing, and then it goes through to an optimizer, which John said. The pricing was discussed just a little bit earlier. These are the prices that are laid out by the Solarize Meridian Energy team for Solarize, and it's all based on the size of your system. As was said, every house uses a different amount of energy, and that's why the first thing we're going to ask for, if you would like to do a site visit to propose this, is your latest utility bill, because that tells us how much energy you have used in the last year, and we can offset as was said, up to 100% of that. So if you have less than a 5 kilowatt system, like Val's was 4.4, then it's at 310 a watt. If it's a 5 to 10 kilowatt system, that drops down to $3 a watt. And then if you're over a 10 kilowatt system, it drops down a little bit more. And then you can see kind of what the prices for that will generally look like. And then what the tax credit will do to the final price. And that is without any upgrades on top of that. So the deadline for the Solarize program is you have 1 week to let me or Valerie know that you would like to have a site visit and proposal. So that's just a simple email. Yes, I would like to get a proposal in. So you have 1 week from today. And then we will set up a site visit and go over your, hopefully we can get a utility bill like I just said. And then we will set up a site visit to show some possibilities, and then we can talk about what is best for you and your home. Then when we get a proposal, you will have at least 2 weeks to decide if you would like to join in to the Solarize program with this group. So you will have by June 7th to reply that you want to be in the group or not. And we really need it to be at that point so we can figure out what the discount is for the whole group. If we can get your solar site visit set up a little bit earlier and we get everything taken care of and we get a proposal out to you, you might get a little bit more than that, 2 weeks. We're just trying to get them out as quickly as we can so that everyone has as much time as they can to view the documents and think about it, because we do understand it's an investment, and we want you to do your due diligence in finding out what is right for you.
Yeah, it's free, right? There's no cost to the proposal. So
Absolutely, it is a free visit. We just ask for your time.
So this looks like it's a time for questions. Does anybody, yeah, it looks like Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, hi everyone, Mike Zarukian, and hi Pete. Pete came out to my house recently and gave us an estimate, and he and I are still going back and forth on details. I'm one of those Okemos residents who also has a generator, and so I've made life more challenging, but Absolute Power's done a nice job of researching the compatibility between a backup generator and this, and we're going to be getting a larger solar than what we have, but we're basically about ready to make our decision. We've actually interviewed and had a proposal from all 5 of the vendors who are listed in the Solarize Meridian project. So I think all of them are worth looking at and are very professional and have some good things to offer. One of the things that Pete has been helping us with is deciding whether and when and how to do batteries. And so I think one of the things many of us are trying to anticipate is, again, being able to use batteries for when the sun isn't shining and you want to charge your car, or for some of us, not me, but for some of us, using it as a backup source of power if power goes out. I'm wondering if there's anyone who's heard estimated savings from having batteries, because I've heard everything from very significant help with charging cars and not using electricity for that, to very little savings for batteries, which on average can be $10,000 or even $15,000 each, depending on the size you get.
Yeah, Pete, I know you're going to respond to that, but maybe you can expand it to explain what the market looks like for batteries and why it looks favorable due to the electric cars all needing to come on the market soon.
We do get lots of questions about batteries, and in the kind of the interest of keeping this a little bit more vague and individually talking about that, we're happy to do it on the site visits. A couple of things that I can hit off right away. One, your system does not need a battery to be operational. That's is circulated in some places around solar discussions. We do install batteries, and it is a very new technology. So working with a whole home backup system and a battery can both, we're learning right now, because for a long time they have not been compatible. In terms of the payback on a battery, that is really, really hard to estimate because we don't know how many batteries you're going to use, the size of the battery, the cost of the battery, you know, how much load you're going to put on it, how you program it to draw down and charge from. So there's still a lot of questions about that. We can get prices for you. You know, some systems are allowed to have a couple batteries built on, some are not. But the biggest thing right now is, again, we can do it. Batteries are relatively expensive, but a lot of what we have found that
cardiovascular associate.
customers are doing is you can set yourself up for future battery edition.
Yeah, there's science cardiovascular.
Sorry,
I'm in
and that allows you to both be EV and battery compatible if, say, the prices come down from where they are right now. And at the end of the year GLA Gala, one of the things that I took away from it, which I thought was wonderful, and John, you can kind of nod if this was something that was news to you or not, but in the last 10 years, solar prices have gone down 90%, and they have gone up in efficiency 90%. And so what we're expect to see is, with the push for both the public and the private sector for batteries and battery technology, them to become more available, more efficient, and less expensive within the near future, the next couple of years. So again, happy to discuss it a little bit more on site with specific questions. But then, yeah, for that, I think there's still some unknowns with how every system will be compatible and work. But again, happy to have those discussions in a more one-on-one basis.
Just on a general basis, John, maybe you could speak to this. When are all, I mean, the big three have said they're not going to make internal combustion motors anymore. When? How many years away is that? They're going to be primarily battery, yes?
Yeah, I think General Motors is 2035. Yeah, let me mention a couple of things about my kind of perspective on storage. And a question was asked about the federal tax credit. The federal tax credit will apply to batteries that are purchased in conjunction with solar systems. You know, one thing to consider is, you know, do you have outages frequently or long outages? Because that's not a cost consideration, but it may be important to you that you have the backup power. And if that's a consideration, that adds a whole value to batteries that it's hard to put a dollar amount on. The other thing is there are time of use rates now, which means some of you may have noticed, you know, you're getting charged more during the day, you know, for your electricity than you are at night and weekends. And so there are some people that are able to use batteries in order to kind of figure out the best way to use their solar power to kind of minimize those higher rates during peak times, because some of the peak times is in early evening when people come home from work and start cooking and turn everything on. So it isn't automatically the time when you're getting your most solar power. So, you know, there's some people, and this gets a little sophisticated, are basically storing some of their solar power during the day and then using it still during that peak time when you got the high rates. But again, this is kind of a, if you want to explore that, Pete will be happy to talk more during your site visit and kind of think about whether it makes sense for you.
Other questions? Oh, Michael?
The point I was trying to make is, in my research, we have a generator because those of you who lived in Meridian Township in 2014 remember the ice storm that took us all out for days or longer. Realistically, solar batteries don't have enough power to keep your whole house or even important parts of your house going for very long. So for prolonged outages, you really need a gas generator, a natural gas generator, and that's fine for those of us who you know, want to do that. But then you want to make sure that you have that compatibility to have both a gas backup and your solar backup. I think for most of us, and again, that's why the question for me was not so much return on investment, but because I actually think there is probably no return on investment for batteries yet. They're just too expensive. But many of us are doing this not just for a financial return on investment, right? We're doing it to try to save the planet and keep future generations going. And I'm good with that, and that's going to be my goal. But part of the issue is just how much bang for the buck is there from doing a lot of what John was mentioning and Val and others to be able to say, if you have a battery, you may never get paid back for it, but here's how much less gas or other fossil fuels you'll be using by doing it. And if it's enough to justify itself, then that's probably the decision all of us will be making. So I'll be talking with Pete a little bit and others, not so much on the ROI, but this will keep you from using this many kilowatt hours per day if you have a battery storage. And I think that's a consideration for some of us.
Lisa?
Hi there. I just have a quick question, and I think some of what you guys have said has sort of, I may have already answered it, but I'm trying to understand, if you don't have a battery or a generator, you're putting in the solar panels, what happens during a power outage?
Very good question. If you do not have backup battery, then when your power goes out, the solar panels go down as well. That's a code issue. The power has to go somewhere. And I have a solar array at my house. I have a ground mount, and I don't have a backup. So when the power goes out, my panels go out. If it was a nice sunny day after the storm that put the power out and your solar panels were functioning and it feeds through your house and you have extra, that generally goes through the line. And then, as John said, consumers will buy it from you. Valerie said that as well. But we can't have power going out onto the line when there's workers out there. So the inverters and the optimizers are built in a special way that they sense that power source. And what the battery does is that has an automatic transfer switch. So if the power goes out, or if you're in a low light time, nighttime, or a cloudy day, that switch flips over and it senses the battery as its energy source and keeps it on, keeps the panels functioning. Does that answer your question, Lisa?
I think it does. Typically speaking, I hear people using batteries plural. Is it something where you buy a battery, multiple batteries?
All depends on what you want for your system and your budget. So you can go with one battery. One SolarEdge hub inverter can handle 3 batteries.
Sue?
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a 22-year-old roof, and I wonder how often you remove panels to put a roof on, put them back on, what kind of cost that would be.
That's a question we get a lot, so thank you very much. Our rule of thumb is if you think that you probably have 10 years or less of life left on your roof, you probably want to have it looked at. We can come out and take the panels off and take the racking off. We charge an hourly rate for it. So if you think you need to replace your roof in 2 years, then it might be better to do that before the solar is installed. But if you think it's going to be, 10, 15 years down the line, then it may be better to get that more credits built up, more time put in, and then do it. And if you're somewhere in between, it's helpful to know that putting panels on your roof will actually lengthen the life of the roof because they're not getting as much direct sun, direct precipitation, things like that actually degrade the roof a little bit faster over time. And I'd be happy to talk with you about that. We do have a roofing contractor that we've worked with before that has done good estimates and looking at roofs, and no charge on that. So we're happy to share that information. Or if you have someone you trust, please feel free to reach out.
Related to that, what kind of disasters have you had in terms of roof leakage after you put on solar panels?
We have never gotten a call about a roof leak or anything like that from an installation that we have done. We do have warranties on our work, and those will be spelled out in the documents that we send over with the proposal.
You also send over like a diagram of how they're affixed, and it's pretty amazing, or I found it to be convincing, the engineering of it, that how it is protects water from getting in the house. Plus there's not that many penetrations even. I noticed on ours it was in the teens, I think, to hold up the 11 brackets. So anyway, Claudia?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood. if you do have battery backup, then if there's a power outage, your solar system will still charge the batteries and the electricity will come off the batteries. Is that correct? It's only
Yes.
if you don't have battery backup that if power goes out, your solar system goes out too.
Yes. So a battery creates an island around your house. So the same way that a whole home generator would, the power goes out, that transfer switch switches, and then the generator knows to come on. So it goes over, and if it's at night or you know, a low light day, or it was a rainstorm, then it will start drawing from the battery. If the day comes around, the power is still out, and all of a sudden you have a beautiful sunny day, then it's going to allow those panels to produce, feed your house, and charge the battery at the same time. So how long will the battery last has lots of different components, depending on weather, depending on how big the battery is, depending, do you lessen your load a little bit to just allow like a pump or refrigerators, or are you trying to run your whole house like you would on every other night when you have power? So there's still a lot of factors that go in it, but yes, if you have a battery and the power goes out, it will stay on as long as the battery is able to have energy.
Right. Okay.
John, I see there's a question about a housing association and working with one in terms of panels, and maybe Pete, you can chime in too. We've had those questions at the energy team meeting, certainly. Do you want to speak to that, John?
We've had some experience with that in Meridian Township. There's a gentleman not too far from where I live who lives in a condominium association, which has even more strict rules, of course, about things because the association, you know, owns the outside. He was very persistent and kind of answered all their questions. Absolute Solar actually worked with him too, with Joe, and he was, after a lot of discussion, able to get a solar system installed, and then at least one or two of his neighbors did the same thing. I also had some communication with more like a typical neighborhood homeowners association, independent homes. And she initially contacted her HOA and they said, nope, can't do it. And so we advised her to go back and talk some more to her, ask them what were the justifications for them turning it down. And then she, again, after some discussions, was given approval. A lot of that has to do with basically just kind of talking through the issues with folks, you know, and some things are more concerned than others. You know, if you end up actually putting your solar system on your back roof and nobody even sees it, then it's almost like a non-issue. If you put it on the front, then of course people are real concerned about, oh my goodness, how's that going to look? And my housing values are going to go down. And you know, research shows that actually that hasn't happened. Where there are solar systems put on homes, it doesn't really affect neighbors' housing values. So that's, you know, you have an HOA and they have some restrictions or some policy about having to approve things. You need to think in terms of it's going to take some discussion.
Michael, did you want to add to that? You added a comment. Sounds like you have some direct experience.
Yeah, so I'm in a neighborhood homeowners association, so they're all individual houses. And I mentioned I sit on the board, which means it's my job to know the bylaws well enough to be able to help my fellow residents know whether or not the board has the power to say no if they wanted to. For us, it's really, there's nothing about solar. There may be in yours, but it really relates to additional construction. And if that's the way your homeowners thing looks, then you just have to, number one, ask, is this part of what you would consider additional construction, like a shed or an addition on the side of the house? And no matter what it is at the end, it's basically, as John pointed out, it's a matter of aesthetics. If your backyard backs into the woods, almost certainly, absolutely no one will care. If it faces the road, then Pete's comment about, well, maybe it's better to have black edges than aluminum edges or things like that. That might be small decisions, but it helps keep everyone happy. And as long as people you know, at least in my neighborhood, which is East Point, have a chance to take a look at it and, you know, sort of weigh in. It was a pretty easy process for us to get approval. So with any luck, you'll have the same, but it does pay to read your bylaws if this applies to you, so that people can't just say, nope, you can't do it. Well, where does it say I can't do it, right? So.
I think in condominiums, it's probably more challenging because then it's an issue of, you know, you're jointly paying for the exterior maintenance, and you've had a little experience with that. I don't know if there's anything you can share on that or not.
It depends on a couple different things. Is it a shared roof space? You know, does the association own the whole roof versus a, you know, just an HOA where you own your home, but you are abiding what the neighborhood has set up as rules. So we have worked with them, and we are willing to work with HOAs in the future.
Other questions?
I have a question for you, Val, and thanks for organizing this. You did your due diligence to get 3 proposals. It feels like what people are considering now is whether to do this without doing their own due diligence, and I'm wondering whether your experience with your 3 proposals was that you came away with a clear-cut winner. And whether you think there's a set of things that are unique to, you know, each people's house, that there's a reason that people should be trying to get second and third opinions on this.
Well, yeah, I thought the bids that I had gotten again would be probably early fall, so it's been several months. There was quite a bit of difference in the pricing of them, and I don't know a lot now, but I know a lot more than I did then. So there was probably, you know, differences in terms of the materials maybe. But I think it's worthwhile to do it. I think what's going to be looked at is correct me on this, but there's something that everybody can use that shows how the sunlight hits the roof of your house. And so they can actually predict how much sun and where the panels will go and how the panels would fit on that, say, south facing portion of your roof, or maybe an east or west portion. So they can figure out how much you need based on what you've used your last month. And so how many panels you would need, and probably maybe even whether it can be done or not if you're in a completely shady area. I don't know. Pete, maybe, I don't know if I'm screwing this up for you or not, but you can come and correct me. But you can get those fairly quickly from other installers. In fact, I don't think of the 4 anyone came out to meet me until Pete did after, it was almost after the fact. But you know, Pete's company also does work with the township, so they have a long proven, you know, there was a lot of trust there. And so besides price, there was also that. And so I don't know, that's how I ambled into the decision. And I think, like Michael, it was, you know, it's hard to make the hard and fast judgment on price, but you know, you're doing the right thing. And it kind of feels like sometimes like the climate in the world's so crazy, you know, if you could work towards something where you're a little more independently functioning, that gives me a little comfort at least. So does that answer the questions?
Yeah, I'm curious why consumers has these limits on how much you can do. What's the public policy that that wants to prevent me because I don't use, I try to limit how much power I use, and maybe we'll get my electric car 3 years from now. Why the that?
I think they're a monopoly and they're you know, they want to control the business. So in some states like Florida, I think that the utilities pretty much have control of having their own wind and solar panels, and then the public buys from them, just like we did when they had gas and, you know, coal-fired plants. I'm probably getting too far off on an angle. John and Pete, you
Well,
wanna?
yeah, well, I'll mention too that, and this is a simplification, but, you know, utilities basically earn profit on their investments. And so if you approach them and say, now, would you rather have everybody put solar systems on their roofs? And then you buy, you know, you get some excess power from them, you know, the homeowners, or would you rather build your own solar farm or wind farm and earn a rate of return and a profit on that? What would most business people do? They would kind of say, yeah, I want to earn a profit. I want to control and also, you know, make that investment. And so that's the reality of it. Now they're regulated, so the Public Service Commission has a say in this. But that's one, initially when the law was passed, this bill credit was 1-for-1, which we thought was reasonable and certainly simple to understand. And then the utilities, who have a lot of influence with the legislature, passed a law that basically ended up resulting in the bill credit being cut in half. And that's basically the bottom line. I always joke that utilities love solar and wind, but they want to own it all themselves.
You know, Chris, I don't know if I completely answered your question, but my point was that you can get bids from other companies in a very short amount of time because they could almost do it at their desk. So I don't know if that's helpful. Claudia?
I was just wondering about shade and how much that factors into whether it's viable or not. I mean, I know, like, we have solar lights all around our area, and they work even though we've got some shade, but I don't know how it would work for the roof. I guess the best thing is to have somebody come out and take a look.
Yeah, and again, they can probably do it from their desk. If you tell them that you want a proposal, they can look this up. Pete, how does it go? How do you know where the shade hits on trees? It's something, what do you use to do that? Yeah, Google Maps.
It's a combination of our satellite imagery and the solar software that we have. And so that takes in a whole lot of information and aspects. So there's shading. Are there a lot of trees around your house? Which direction does your roof face? Do you have a true south facing roof? Is it kind of more of an east-west? It takes into account Michigan seasons where the summers are going to be longer, the sun is higher in the sky, the pitch of your roof. All of those things are factors in what we put together. So the basic rule of thumb is the wide open, the better south facing unobstructed light you're going to get, the more efficient the panels are going to be and the more production you're going to get. That doesn't mean that it won't produce in low light. It just means it will probably take more panels, or it may, we may not be able to get up to 100% based on what consumers or any other utility will allow us to put in. Because if we're accounting for shading and they're just working off the raw numbers of what your utility bill says, we can tell what it will take to get you 100% offset. They're not interested in that.
Well, that sucks.
Welcome to our world.
No kidding. That's crazy.
We in most places, we can help quite a bit. And if you are willing to trim back some trees or even remove some, and again, that's not always our recommendation. We understand trees are wonderful for the environment, but we can help pinpoint some things that will help production in the long run.
Okay, great. I guess one other question is, how do we identify that we want to have somebody come out and take a look? Do I just put it in the chat here, or just
Yeah,
say,
well,
come out and take a look?
Yeah, how do we do that, Pete? Do you want to put your contact
My
number?
email is, I can put it in the
All right,
chat. It was already posted earlier. Some of the other groups have replied to Val or to the host, and they've done that. My
Are we losing you?
Both,
So just let me know that you're interested by a week from today. And my first response is going to be wonderful. We'd love to set up a site visit. Can you get your utility bill over to us so we can start working on design?
Can you go over just say your email address out loud? We lost connection there for a little bit, Pete.
Oh, sorry. It's Pete, P-E-T-E, just like you see on the screen, at absolutesolarpower.com.
Yeah, and both Val and I are on the township's energy team. One of us will follow up with you to just kind of remind you that you just got a week, and we'll copy Pete on that, so you'll have his email address too. So because there's some people that Val mentioned earlier missed the meeting, and there's going to be a recording, and so those people also may want to watch the recording and then ask for a site assessment, since it's no cost, and it gives you a lot of good information.
And if you didn't see Michael's response to the price variation by house and bids, the different bids, you were saying, Michael, you have a larger system than us, but it was a $20,000 spread.
Yeah, and again, the batteries really add to that, I'm sure, as well. I would just though endorse what I heard here, which is get Pete out to your house. He came out to our house. He did a really nice job of explaining things. We're actually glad we got all five, because number one, all five vendors, I think, have products that are going to be best for some people. Pete also knows we're about ready to make our decision either way. So I'll have some logistic questions about what to do next, because by this time next month, I'll have signed a contract. So I'll be one of those people in this group if we do that. But I think, again, you're going to be asked, it's very much like buying a car, right? This solar panel maybe has more watts per panel and how much you need to fit on your size. And again, Pete did a nice job of showing us how the sun falls on our roof, and we can talk back to him about what we're planning to do with, trimming any trees if we need to, but he would help say, here's what you don't need to do then if you use a different kind of an approach, and all sorts of small things like that. So it is really easy to go from we're interested to getting that bill in and getting a visit out to the house with an estimate. As I said, I've done it recently with 5 different companies, and it was not unduly burdensome to do that. But certainly Pete's company is one of those we're looking at strongly right now as we make our decision.
Having gone through the whole process of planning and then coming out and checking out ahead of time, and then the build out process, and then coming back to check after, all the staff at Absolute, I've already told Pete this, I think they had wonderful mothers, because they're also respectful and nice, and just really nice young men, and always thorough in their answers. If you have a question, they'll completely put it in context and give you reasons why. So not just a real quick, answer to get rid of you or something. So anyway, further questions or issues?
Yeah, I have a question just on historic pricing. I presume the cost has gone down over the years, and I'm just curious on a year-to-year basis what we're seeing in terms of the pricing for these devices.
Well,
Pete, do you want to?
during the past, let's say 10 years, I keep seeing difference. I mean, literally, the prices have gone down 80–90%. They may have kind of hit bottom now, though, in that I don't know if there probably will be some efficiency improvements and manufacturing improvements, economies of scale. So there's reason to think that the costs will continue to go down, but not like we have during the past 10 years. To give you one example, I put in my first system back in 2010 and paid like $9 per watt. And when I put a system in 9 years later, it was $3 per watt. So just personally in that 9-year period, it went from 9 to 3. And of course, it's gone down a lot. And batteries are also been going down a lot too. So that's a good news for us homeowners.
And there's been some supply chain issues of late, but I mean, we're seeing that everywhere. I don't know if that's working itself out yet or not. Pete, do you see any still challenges?
the panel issue that you mentioned before, we think we're certainly hopeful has been taken care of, because as I mentioned, the first one hit with some just supply chain issues. We moved on to another panel and they got hit with some tariff issues. And so the group that we are with now, like I said, is BAA compliant. So we're not anticipating that, but the world we live in, it's hard to say. We've been very fortunate. There was a little bit of a battery delay. One of the companies that worked with SolarEdge products really well was LG. And they have had some pretty significant COVID supply chain issues, in the sense that some of them are moving on from LG products. And actually, I think LG is moving on from some solar products as well. Are there any other questions? Or something that I did not clarify well enough? I'm more than happy to do that as well.
This is Mike. I will have some questions about logistics of next steps and how the program works. So when you're ready for that, let me know.
Again, that's probably going to be an easier on a one-to-one level.
Well, so here's the deal, because it applies to all of us. So one of the things that I need to understand better about Solarize Meridian and the 15% and whatever maximums and how many people all sign up by when. One of the clarifying questions for me is, would everyone who signs up in a given month need to choose the same solar company to get the discount, or would we all get a 1% discount for each of the 8 or 10 or 12 of us who go with a solar company in the group that Solarize Meridian has picked? In other words, is this all one company kind of a thing for that time period, or do we get
I see what you're saying. You know, the way this works is that you know, the host has basically introduced you to their solar installer, Absolute Solar, and we've put in some deadlines so that you'll be kind of a group, and then we'll be able to determine, you know, what's the discount. Let's say 10 of you or 8 of you decide to participate with this group, then, you know, basically you all get 8% if there's 8 of you, or 10% if it's 10 of you. That doesn't apply to any other group anywhere. Now, there may be, and I heard this in actually the group I did, one of the participants in my group didn't get the group discount from Absolute. They went with a different vendor for whatever reason, installer. And that installer, in order to be competitive, offered a discount of, I think it was 2%. So, you know, it's not that you can't negotiate with other installers, but the whole Meridian, Solarize Meridian is based on the idea that it's worthwhile for any installer who's working with this group to give you a deal, because for obvious reasons, you're all kind of getting on board together and in the same time frame.
What I'm hearing,
did that help?
Well, I just want to be super clear, which is, if 12 of us, all 12, or how many of us are on the call, all chose Absolute Solar, we would each get a 12% discount. But if we go with somebody else,
You're not part of the group.
You're not part of the group. Fascinating. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, I think each host or hostess, I don't know if they had a different installer or not. I know, obviously, I got to pick the installer I wanted. And that's how the program was set up. So,
yeah. So I'll just add one more thing for the group. I have one of the 5 vendors that I talked to. As soon as that vendor heard about Solarize Meridian, offered an immediate 3% discount on our contract.
Oh.
None of the others have yet. But that's one way, and now I can see why a little bit, right? Because unless somehow a whole group finds that this company is the best for them, and the question is, how likely is that going to be more than 3 of us in the time frame necessary to make a commitment to move forward? And
actually, I'm glad to hear that story. The reason being that, of course, I'm just a homeowner like all of you, and now Pete may not like that story, but it's fine with me because my goal and the goal of the Meridian Energy team is to get all of you, if you're interested, solar systems for a very good price. And so if you can get a good price out of Pete and Absolute, that's marvelous, especially with the discount, which obviously is an advantage potentially, especially like if 10 or 12 of you. But if you can make some other deal with some other installer that you like better or gives you very competitive pricing, that's great. As long as you install solar, I think that's marvelous. And of course, this is not from a business perspective. The cheaper, the better for you. And yeah, so yeah, we have to set this up in such a way that there's kind of a group, and it's all doing making purchases at the same time for it to kind of make it worthwhile for Absolute Solar or for any installer to participate in the program. Now we're giving them the advantage of helping with marketing and education. So there's some real savings on their part, so that they're able to offer a discount. But who knows what other installers might do? And I think it's interesting that it looks like the Solarize program in Meridian has made some installers realize they have to be more competitive, which is a good thing.
I've got a question more of a nuts and bolts kind of thing. How is the credit shown we haven't had a consumer's bill since we kicked our program on. How is that energy credit shown, or where would we look to get that? Is it going to appear on a consumer's bill, for example? Yeah.
Well, the excess power that you give to consumers, they will show it the amount that you kind of gave them, and yeah, so it'll show up every month on your bill. Now,
it's my understanding that it's on page 2 that you'll see a distributed generation credit or disbursement.
Okay.
Okay, Todd made a comment that, yeah, we people won't know if they choose to go through with this and with Absolute what the discount will be until the end. That's right. We won't.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah. So so are there any other questions? It looks like we have like a minute. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and thank you, neighbors, for supporting the effort, and fellow Meridians. And I don't know if there's anybody outside of the township or not, but thank you for your interest and your attention. And hopefully we will be fellow solar users.